We've all been there, right? It's 2 a.m., you're crammed in a dorm room, those awful fluorescent lights are humming, and you're on, what, your third cup of coffee? You're staring at a textbook, pulling a frantic all-nighter. You're putting in the hours, literally until you're completely exhausted. But then, the exam results come back, and the grades just do not reflect that massive effort. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely dismantle the way you prepare for exams by applying the science of deliberate practice.
So why exactly do we study for hours without actually improving? It's a phenomenon called the autopilot study trap. Picture this. A student locks themselves in a library, pulls out a mountain of books, and just kind of randomly pores over notes until they're totally bleary-eyed. They assume, if the material crosses their eyes enough times, it's going to magically stick in their memory. But this brute force approach, it's completely inefficient. It relies heavily on an illusion of effort.
To understand why this happens, we have to look at this concept from writer and memory champion Joshua 4. He calls it the OK plateau. Basically, this is the exact point where you've automated a skill just enough that your brain literally stops actively working to improve it. And hey, it's a completely normal biological function which should really validate your frustration. It's not a lack of effort on your part, it's a well-documented tendency called the principle of least effort. Your brain just shifts to autopilot to save energy. So you feel comfortable, but you aren't actually getting any better.
So, the crucial point here is understanding the stark difference between generic practice and deliberate practice. Generic practice, think rote reading, passive review, that's just maintenance. It's like going for a really slow jog just to stay fit. But deliberate practice, that is active retrieval. It's a focused, repeated striving to actually reach beyond your current comfort level. Generic practice keeps you stuck right there on the plateau, but deliberate practice guarantees actual, measurable growth.
And this brilliantly illustrates the point using a sports analogy. Think about college versus professional basketball. The rote reviewers, they're basically trying to score using an underhand granny shot. Sure, they might practice that granny shot for twice as many hours as anybody else on the court, but the non-grind, straight-A students are the ones who figured out how to shoot a proper academic jump shot. Better technique is always going to trump just blindly throwing more effort at a problem.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to dismantle the more hours equals better grades myth step by step. First, the autopilot study trap. 2, meta-learning and concept mapping. 3, isolating your knowledge bottlenecks. 4, the quiz and recall strategy. And finally, number 5, creating fast feedback loops. Let's get right into it.
Okay, starting with part 1, the autopilot study trap, or escaping the illusion of effort.
Moving right along to part 2, meta-learning and concept mapping. This is all about mapping the territory.
Drawing directly from Scott Young's principles of ultralearning, we learn that before you dive deep into the weeds of your textbooks, you've absolutely got to map out your strategy first. He encourages us to ask 3 really key questions during this meta-learning phase. Step 1, ask why, to uncover your actual underlying motivation for learning. Step 2, identify what, as in what specific knowledge and skills are required to get the results you want on that exam. And step 3, assemble how you're going to learn, by gathering the right resources, optimizing your environment, and choosing the best methods.
As part of this prep, one incredibly fantastic meta-learning strategy is developing a concept map. Basically, this is a map you create entirely from scratch that highlights the key topics you've learned so far, and crucially, how they actually relate to each other. By visualizing these relationships right out of the gate, you're going to save yourself dozens of hours later. Why? Because it stops you from just memorizing isolated, totally disconnected facts. It's a real game changer.
Up next is part 3, isolating your knowledge bottlenecks for targeted drills.
Now, as you apply your knowledge, you're inevitably going to hit what are called rate-determining steps. Basically, these are the specific bottlenecks that are holding back your progress. Straight-A students, they actively identify these specific weaknesses so they can run targeted drills. And one of the most practical methods to isolate these bottlenecks is by constructing what we call a mega problem set. This is especially great for technical courses. Here's exactly how you build one. First, match your lectures to the relevant problem sets. Next, copy sample problems straight from your lecture notes onto a totally blank sheet of paper. Just the questions, okay? Not the answers. Label that sheet with a lecture date so you can easily find the answers later. And finally, add technical explanation questions, basically forcing yourself to explain the core concepts behind those problems. Boom! You've just created the ultimate targeted drill sheet.
And listen, this isn't just some clever study hack. It's backed heavily by peer-reviewed science. The renowned psychologist K. Anders Ericsson found that, quote, experts break complex skills into micro-components and practice them in isolation. Whether you're playing chess, learning an instrument, or trying to ace an economics exam, novices always try to practice the whole thing at once and then wonder why they aren't improving. Drilling these isolated microcomponents, that is the actual proven secret to non-grind academic success.
All right, part 4, the quiz and recall strategy. This is all about focusing on active recall.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the core philosophy. We are going to completely banish passive reading from our routine. The quiz and recall method is simple, but man, it is ruthless. To truly imprint a concept on your mind, whether it's historical dates or complex molecular structures, you have to first review it and then try to explain it completely unaided in your own words. Look, if you can stare at a blank sheet of paper and reproduce a solution from scratch without a single mistake, it's not going anywhere. Merely reading over something just gives you a false, really dangerous sense of security.
As you're designing these mock exams and practicing your retrieval, you really need to monitor which zone you're actually operating in. Check this out. If you're getting every single mock question right, well, you're in the comfort zone. Sure, it feels safe and automatic, but there's literally zero growth. You're just doing maintenance. On the flip side, if you're in the panic zone, the material feels impossible, it's overwhelming, and you learn absolutely nothing because of pure anxiety. Deliberate practice lives right in the slightly uncomfortable middle, the learning zone. You want to aim for a difficulty level where you are failing roughly 15% of the time. This specific tension, that's what ensures you are actually growing your expertise.
Which brings us to part 5, creating fast feedback loops. Because remember, practice makes permanent.
I cannot stress this enough. You absolutely must create a tight feedback loop where you test yourself and get corrected immediately after reviewing new material. I really want to emphasize this heavily. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Let that sink in. If you practice a math problem with the wrong formula, you're just cementing the wrong formula into your brain. You are literally just getting better at delivering the wrong answer. This is exactly why practicing your mock tests without immediate corrective feedback is downright dangerous to your final grades. So here is the exact active, fast feedback loop you should be using. Step 1, answer your mock questions. Step 2, put a check mark next to the specific questions you miss or struggle with. Step 3, review the solutions to those marked questions immediately. This is your essential corrective feedback. Then step 4, take a quick break, let your brain breathe. Finally, repeat the test, but this time attempt only the questions you marked on that previous pass. You just repeat this entire fast-paced cycle until you complete a full round with 0 check marks.
You can think of this entire process as your academic disaster insurance. The ultimate straight-A strategy is to eliminate your question marks the second they arise. If a topic flies by in class and you don't fully get it, or you miss a problem on a pop quiz, do not just let it sit there. By resolving these question marks immediately throughout the semester, you completely avoid that awful, panicky scenario of having to learn a huge quantity of material from scratch the night before the final exam.
So let's bring all this together and see how it builds a complete, bulletproof study framework. Step 1 is meta-learning. Map your concepts out so you actually know the terrain you're dealing with. Step 2 is drill. Isolate those specific rate-determining bottlenecks using a mega problem set. Step 3 is retrieval. Use mock exams to practice pulling that information out of your brain, completely unaided. And step 4 is feedback. Run tight loops to correct your errors instantly. This blueprint beautifully and efficiently replaces the brute force, exhausting all-nighter. It just works.
So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. Will your next study session be genuine practice, or will it just be a performance? Because you can totally keep performing the mindless routine of highlighting notes and just hoping for the best, staying stuck right there on that okay plateau. Or you can start using targeted, deliberate practice to achieve true mastery and finally get your time back. The choice is entirely yours.